this is a really key thing that comes up in our consulting days. It came up all the time, but distribution strategy is actually quite defining of the identity of a reinsurer nowadays. So when you're thinking about who you're going to be, you have the historical models that we discussed of especially Swiss Re and Munich Re, as the sort of big two Europeans, that to some extent other reinsurers have begun to replicate. But actually a lot of them are looking at this space now and going, do we want to have 50 plus offices around the world? That's expensive. Do we want to have tens of thousands of staff? That's very expensive. Is there a way we can access original risk in a more efficient way, whether that's, as you say, through MGAs, whether that's through providing backing to software-based sale of insurance and then providing reinsurance capacity fairly automatically off the back of that. So it gets really, really interesting as a reinsurer to work out how to spread your risk out into these portfolios and to access risk as capital. But equally, I think this is the bit that maybe fewer people will know about, again, especially if you're new to reinsurance on this podcast. The whole same set of questions are being asked the other side of the chain. So not only is it reinsurers, how do you access risk? It's reinsurers, how do you access capital as well? And capital providers, how do you access reinsurers to access risk to some extent? So there's a whole class of product called ILS, or insurance-linked securities, which is one means of providing firms that have lots of capital, could be pension funds, could be all sorts of things, with a way of getting exposed to insurance risk. But one of the most common ways is to provide equity to reinsurers as a way of getting exposure to insurance and reinsurance risk. But we've found one of the biggest contributing factors to the softening of the reinsurance market over the last 10, 20 years has been a real increase in the amount of capital available on the ILS product side of things. When we talk about ILS here, we're talking about things like catastrophe bonds, so bonds that hit or bust, basically pay out if a disaster happens. Parametrically triggered products, like if wind speed in this zone goes above a certain amount, this product pays out to the insurance company or similar. And these sort of things now, I think, provide about 100 billion of capital in terms of scale out of the 500 billion of capital that's available across the industry. So they really have grown as an alternative way of, to some extent, disintermediating the reinsurers as a alternative. They struggle a bit, I think, when it comes to longer tail lines, because the investors typically don't want to put their capital in for many, many years, whereas...
Because it can get trapped in things, can it?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I think they're more sort of debt instruments that they just want to be able to get out of, whereas the equity model of we're a reinsurance company and our balance sheet is your protection is more well prepared for this. We won't find out if we're going to have a claim until 7 years' time, once all the lawsuits are over.